few stories that actually save lives. Dante's Divine Comedy is such a story. From the very beginning of its publication, it has enchanted and captured the imagination of countless other artists, writers, musicians, poets, philosophers, and even politicians to change the world. From its very beginning, artists like Botticelli, Michelangelo, Rodin, William Blake, and Salvador Dali have all been captured by the vision it creates of a landscape, a journey that's all about the transformation of the soul. Musicians like Franz Liszt, poets Milton, Chaucer, T.S. Eliot, writers like Primo Levi have all been changed forever with their encounters with this story. It shaped Carl Jung's imagination and helped guide him through the middle of his own dark night. And we find Dante all around us. I like to say that Dante is the water that we swim in and we don't even know it. Even works like Hannibal Lecter and the sequel to The Silence of the Lambs has countless references to Dante's Divine Comedy. It is a story that lights the flame of imagination from one generation to the next. And it's a story that was born in the middle of death, disaster, and disgrace. Dante Alighieri came of age in a time that was kissed with the light of the troubadour tradition. He grew up with this idea that love was a pathway to the divine, and that by falling in love and following the call of that voice, you could transform the human soul. Dante did just such a thing. As a 9-year-old boy, he fell in love with a young girl, Beatrice Portinari, and the imprint of this girl and the goodness that she represents seized him with a passion that changed his life. He tells us that 9 years later, he saw Beatrice again. And this time when he went home, he had a dream. In the dream, his heart was taken out of him, and it was given to Beatrice. And he knew from that moment on that he needed to find a deeper, truer, more noble purpose. And he gave himself to poetry as a pathway of spiritual transformation. However, Dante quickly also became mired in a world that was complex, dark, and disordered. Beatrice died young. This broke his heart, even though they had been given in marriage to other people, because she was his muse. Then he got caught up in political battles. Those political battles were a disaster for him. Eventually, all of his money was confiscated, and a death sentence was placed on his head. He was put in permanent exile for the rest of his life. And in that state of despair and disaster, Dante gave birth in his imagination to the first act of narrative therapy that I know of in the Western world. In the Divine Comedy, he literally writes his way out of hell. In the beginning of the story, he imagines Beatrice now in paradise, looking down and seeing how lost and alone he is. In the opening canto, Dante tells us, in the middle of our life, I found myself in a dark wood, having wholly lost the right way. He imagines that there is a guide who comes to shepherd him through the underworld, down through the bowels of hell itself. It was his favorite poet, Virgil. And as in their journey, they traverse this realm. It looks like a funnel. It begins with all the souls who are caught up in the hot passions of lust and greed and gluttony. And it gets colder and colder and colder as you go deeper. Because the worst sins of all are not the places where we lose ourselves to passion, Dante suggests. The worst places are the places where we grow cold-hearted. Dante has to confront all of these imaginings in his realm. He has to confront his own sense of fallibility, his own wrath, his own greed, his own gluttony, his own lust, and especially his own pride. As he goes through these three realms, he encounters a wide variety of characters, an encyclopedia of humanity. There are characters that are drawn from the Bible. There are characters drawn from Greek mythology, from history, and even characters from his own life. He encounters the real-life lovers Paolo and Francesca, who are locked forever in a whirlwind of lust. And he sees them and converses with them, and Francesca says to him, "Yes, and you shall meet my husband who murdered us further down below. For the sin of murder is greater than the sin of adultery." Just as one example of the ways that this story peeks out at us through history, this very famous sculpture by Rodin is the depiction of Paolo and Francesca in their first adulterous kiss. Although it's found on countless Valentine's Day cards, the story is actually one of treachery and betrayal. Rodin was obsessed by Dante and used images from the Inferno in works that seized his imagination for over 30 years. This is another image of Paolo and Francesca being blown about by the winds of lust. As Dante and Virgil progress, they go down deeper and deeper, colder and colder and colder. They encounter characters like the Furies and the Minotaur. They find people who are so enmeshed in battle with one another that they can never stop ripping out one another's voices. At the bottom of hell, he finds treachery and betrayal. He finds where the hearts have frozen over indeed. He encounters people who are only talking heads, having lost their connection to their deeper humanity. And finally, at the very bottom, the pit of the Inferno, he sees Satan himself gnawing on the heads of three traitors. And in a scene worthy of George Lucas, Dante and Virgil run and jump and grab on Satan's furry belly and crawl down, and they find themselves suddenly with the world turned right side up, arriving on Easter morning on the shores of humility. From that moment, we move from a realm of isolation and violence and disconnection to a journey of hope, a journey of transformative possibilities, and a journey of community. The mists part, and a guardian comes with the souls who are ferrying to the shores of humility to climb the mountain of purgatory and hope, and they are singing a song of exile and return, hope and lamentation. Dante and Virgil discover that the world is now right side up, that the funnel has turned to this mountain of hope, and Dante himself must ascend and face and fight all of his own inner demons as he climbs up. Dante's world is an amazing visual imaginative world in which there's this incredible symmetry as well. So as we climb up the mountain of purgatory, we find 9 terraces where he will encounter 7 terraces of sin and virtue, learning to differentiate right and wrong, to find a middle path of balance. And he will find at the beginning a waiting chamber of souls who are waiting to come up this mountain. And at the final gate and threshold, he'll find himself in a state, as T.S. Eliot called it, of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. He will find himself purged of all the ways that he's gone astray in his life, in the Garden of Eden, in the place of new innocence. This journey is woven with music. For every terrace in purgatory, for every sphere in paradise, Dante actually gives us a soundscape. He has references of music for the pilgrims to be singing together at every step of the way, songs that would have been as familiar to Dante's audience as Happy Birthday or Somewhere Over the Rainbow are for our modern ears. And as they climb this mountain of hope, then Dante has to find the strength and the courage to look at himself, to change. At first it's difficult going, but the pathway up the mountain of virtue and purification gets easier and easier and easier. At the very end, however, Dante must go through the very flames and fire of lust, and here he quakes and trembles. Virgil says to him the words that will make him leap through the fire. My son, everything you have ever wanted is on the other side. Beatrice is waiting for you. And in another scene worthy of a John Williams score, Dante takes off and runs through the fire, through the flame, and there he sees the woman that he has loved since he was 9 years old. But unlike the words of welcome we might have been expecting, Beatrice calls him to a fierce accountability. She says to him, "You had so much potential, and you frittered it away. You knew the pathway. You knew the pathway to the divine lay through poetry and love. And yet, you turned your attention instead to the worldly matters of politics. You lost your way. You squandered your gift." Dante is reduced to tears on his knees as he recognizes the truth of the ways that he really has gone astray. But then she says, you must put shame and blame behind you. He has to bathe in 2 rivers, the river of remembrance, remembering all the good he has known, all the good that he has ever done. And he must drink as well of the river of forgetting, of letting go, of any bitterness, any sense of regret, any sense of the road not taken. Having bathed in these 2 rivers, he's fit and ready to ascend, and Beatrice becomes his celestial guide up through the spheres of paradise. Here they encounter saints upon saints. And one of the most important messages he discovers is in the very first sphere, the sphere of the moon. Dante wonders, as he encounters these souls of the blessed, he wonders if they wouldn't rather be a little higher up in paradise. And he asks that question and he gets the answer back, no, you see, for God's will is our peace. And throughout Dante's journey in paradise, he learns a very important lesson. The place that you occupy in paradise is not determined really by how good you've been, but by the question, how much beauty can you bear? Every sphere goes brighter and brighter and brighter and more luminous. And it's a little bit like if we were to go to the optometrist and have our eyes dilated and then go out in a brilliant sunshiny day. It would hurt. It would sting. So every soul is accorded a place, just in proportion to that question. How much beauty can you bear? As he moves up these spheres and hears these celestial songs, many of them antiphons to the Virgin Mary, he encounters so many teachers. In the sphere of the sun, in the 4th sphere, he encounters the teachers of wisdom. And one of the most incredible lessons in this place is that paradise is not a banquet table where you're going to be next to people that you like. Dante places amongst the teachers of the sphere of the sun characters who in real life were at each other's throats, characters who were excommunicating one another and in some cases wished to see the others burn. And here he has something astonishing. He has a Franciscan tell the story of St. Dominic's life, and he has a Dominican narrate the story of St. Francis's life. In Dante's own time, the Dominicans and the Franciscans were far worse than the Republicans and the Democrats in our own time. Not only were they maligning each other, calling each other names, trying to stand in each other's ways, but they were in some cases literally burning one another at the stake. Dante suggests in Paradise that paradise is the place where we are able to tell our enemies' story, to see the good that lives inside of them, to give voice to what is most beautiful about who they really are. It is a place where we learn to reconcile the tensions and the opposites and to behold the true beauty that dwells inside each human soul. Dante continues to ascend, and after Beatrice leaves him behind in the final realms, he encounters a third guide, Bernard of Clairvaux, who teaches him about grace. Virgil, the pagan poet, represented reason. Reason can get you through hell. It can't take you to paradise. Only love can do that in the form of Beatrice for Dante. But grace is necessary to finally apprehend the ultimate sense of divinity, and Bernard of Clairvaux escorts him there. In his final vision, Dante encounters this mystic rose. It's comprised of the souls of all the blessed, each one singing their note, each one singing their song in the harmony of the spheres. It's an image that suggests that each one of us is a necessary part of creation's chorus, this rose that continues to blossom and open and sing its song of exaltation. Dante's journey, then, is above all a journey of what it means to be human. Sometimes we find ourselves stuck, as the citizens of hell do, unable to find our way straight, stuck in our own narrow-mindedness, unable to see the people around us, having our hearts grow cold. Sometimes in life, we find ourselves on our knees on the shores of humility, coming face to face with the difficult truths of who we have been and what we have done that has caused harm. And it is the long, slow journey of transformation that is a hopeful one. And sometimes we're lucky to taste paradise. And paradise is that state where we feel like we truly belong, like we are part of that great chorus, where we know our place, where we feel at one, where we have reconciled the seeming opposites in our lives, where we truly belong. This story, then, is a journey of epic adventure, outwardly, but inwardly. It invites us to the deepest possible questions in contemplating our human, earthly existence. It exists as a vision that integrates the past, the present, and even the future. It is, above all, a map of transformation. It tells us that it's not so much what we do, but the state of our heart that defines where we go in our lives. It's a journey that suggests that we can't do this alone, that we need guides in our life for both our head and our heart. It's a journey that tells us that reason can get us through hell, love can guide us to paradise, but ultimately grace alone will bring us to God. This journey of Dante's Divine Comedy is an epic adventure, and I invite you to take it with me. In this upcoming series, with art, music, images, and questions for reflections, it's a journey that just might change your life.